Over from Benedicine, 2004, Mr. David Schroeder, the new class president of 1990, and we have Abbot Gary Hoover with us, and Reverend Bishop Rogers with us. We've almost got the whole Bengal family. So we're going to turn it over to Chris. He'll take it from there, and we'll go down the line, and Bishop Rogers will be the last to say something, so we better eat up real quick. Okay, all right, Chris,
awesome.
Go ahead.
Gentlemen, great to see you all. Before I give a couple words, I'd like to recognize and thank Bob for all of his work. So let's give him a quick round of applause. Bob. I've known Bob and the team, Russ and John, for 16 years since I came back to Benedicine. So I'm entering year 16, 5 different roles, 5 different fulfillments, and life's good. But I have the distinct pleasure this morning to introduce our new school president, Mr. Schroeder. I first met Dave probably 10-ish years ago, and the minute I met him, he came in and spoke to some of our young men. And immediately, me as a young professional at the time, I was inspired by his leadership, his delivery, the way in which he could interact with our students. And throughout those 10 years, Dave's been extremely active with our athletics, with our philanthropic efforts, with his time and dedication to the school as an alum. And when the opportunity presented itself, and Dave will get into this when he gives you his background and his story, but he said, I'd be interested in working at Benedicine, both professionally and personally. I was probably the most excited out of any staffer in the building. And as the staff got to get to know and learn and lead with Dave, we all have those same sentiments. So as alums, you'll all hear from Dave right now, but you should be extremely proud that our alma mater is in great hands from a distinct leader, a guy who has tremendous passion for our beloved alma mater, and ultimately just a really, really good human being to center ourselves around the 300 young men we have at our institution. So Dave, thanks for what you do. Thanks for your commitment to Benedicine. And I'm happy to announce and welcome Benedictine's new president, Mr. Dave Schroeder.
Chris always has a way with words that makes me choke up every time I hear him that introduction. But before I start, Bishop Roger, Gary, and fellow men of Benedictine, I hoping we get there. Very good. Men of Benedictine, exactly. So listen, my name is Dave Schroeder, as Chris said. I am just thrilled to be here with you today. This is week 5 on the job. So if you are wanting things to get done or expecting things to get done, by the end of this meeting, it may not happen. I'm still learning, relearning where all the bathrooms are in the school. But we will always listen, and we're always eager to hear from our alumnus in terms of what areas we need to focus on in the school and just in our community. So a little bit, as Chris said, first I would say is I would not be standing here in front of you if it weren't for this guy right here. The amount of time and energy that Chris puts into his job is inspiring to anybody that knows him and is in that building. And again, I tell him all the time when I get in front of people, if it weren't for him and the interactions I had with him, there's no way I'd be in this position. So Chris, thank you. So a little bit about me. I don't want to make this about me, but Chris has sort of forced me to sort of give my background. Again, I grew up in the east side of Cleveland. I have 2 brothers that both are graduates of Benedicine. I have 2 uncles, 59 and 64, that went to Benedicine. My mother grew up off of Buckeye in the neighborhood. And for me, it was never a choice of what high school I had to go to. I had a little bit of a challenge as I was entering into the 9th grade where, unfortunately, my father, who I idoled at the time and still care and love deeply, made a poor decision and left us in a pretty critical time when you're going into high school. My dad was everything to me. And I kind of went down a bad path, if you will. I started hanging around with bad people, or not bad people, but questionable people. I told Mom, I'm going to Richmond Heights. And she's like, no, you're not. You're going to Benedicine. And Dad had moved out at this point, so it was, tough, at that point. Thank God I did, because the kid I used to hang out with, he was in jail by the time he was 19. And I went to Benedictine. And the moment I walked into the doors for that first freshman football practice, and I met a guy named Bruce Coffey, who was a linebacker and a running back, he now coaches over at Glenville. Derek Roble, one of my classmates, and I knew I found the place that I wanted to be. And that just started it. Then I met Coach O, for any of those that know Coach O or played for Coach O. That was an experience of a lifetime for a young man to get acquainted with a gentleman like Coach O. But long story short, my 4 years at Benedictine flew by, but they were the most impactful and memorable of my life. I still have lifelong friends that I go fishing with, that I go to football games with, that I talk to just every day. As a matter of fact, I saw one of them in the building today that came back and visit. So, as a student, I played football. I was the captain of a football team my senior year. Won the distinction of the Joe Rufus Spirit Award, which is a high distinction for those that know the Benedictine. I played for Coach Basu and Coach Russ. I played linebacker and defensive back, and I also quarterbacked my freshman and sophomore year. Played baseball, wrestled, was on student council, and I was president of student council. I think we said that, the new student council president. I was student council president for 4 years. This job's a little bigger than that. That's okay, Bob. Yeah, so I was involved in a lot of different things. I met Abbott Gary, I think my sophomore year. He was my sociology teacher. And if it weren't for Abbott giving me the leadership award in sociology, who knows where I would have been. I credit Abbott for a lot of my professional success, and I had just a wonderful time in his class. Abbott also married my wife Kathy and I. He baptized my 2 children. I have 2 daughters, Stephanie and Melissa. They're both in college. So a lot of memories of and relationships there over the years. After I graduated, I went to the University of Dayton, and I studied computer science and management. And I got a degree called Management Information Systems. And at the time, in '94, computers were just starting to really take off. And I wanted a job where I could make a lot of money, and I didn't have to stay in school for another 6 or 8 years to become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. So I worked for a company called NCR in Dayton, Ohio. Anybody heard of NCR?
Yep.
Yeah, the cash register place. We turned into a computer giant at the time. From there, I went to AT&T, which was a hybrid of NCR. And then I got picked up by a small computer company called IBM. And I thought at the time, I was 26-ish, I think. I thought I'd won life's lottery, because here I am, a kid from Cleveland, not the smartest in the world, just always a hard worker. I'm working for the biggest technology company in the world, and I was blessed to have the opportunity to be around some incredibly smart people, mentors that I looked up to that gave me guidance and coaching along the way. Spent 5 years at IBM, and then I cashed in my life lottery ticket, I think. I got picked up by a small company, excuse me, oh, sorry, I got picked up by a small company called VMware, and it's a virtualization company that's the foundation for all cloud computing that we have today. When I joined the company, it was less than 200 people, and we were about $10 million in revenue. By the time I left 14 years later, we were 20,000 people and $8 billion in revenue. And I had the opportunity to grow with that company, entered as an individual contributor, a role called a systems engineer. And what a systems engineer does is basically works alongside the salesperson to make sure that they're being honest about what our software could do. So they'd go in and try to sell it, and then they'd turn to me and say, does it work this way? And I'd say yes or no. Most of the time I was like, yeah, but, because they weren't always accurate. But I was fortunate enough to get asked to become a leader in that company, moved back to Cleveland, Ohio, and I was responsible for the central region of 5 states. That later became vice president for looking over 450 people in the Americas between Canada, North America, and Latin America. Did that for 14 years, and then I got asked to join Dell Technologies and start another technology group of 150 global enterprise architects, which is similar to a systems engineer. But I've had lifelong mentors and people that have coached me and guided me along the way. But I would tell you that all that success that I had, I never veered from who I was as a person and some of the values that we all learned together at Benedictine. The values of humility, hard work, dedication, prayer, those kind of things. So when this opportunity came up, I actually retired in April of this year. I signed up for a buyout because they were getting rid of a lot of upper management. I was one of the top 300 executives at Dell by the time I left, so I was a part of the executive team. So I left in April, and I was sitting around, and you can only play golf so much or cut your grass so much. And so I started a business. I started a home improvement business because my father was a tradesman, and he always encouraged me to work with my hands. So I started flipping houses and renovating houses. And then I played in a golf tournament, and at that golf tournament, the next day, one of my best friends and Mr. Benedicine from 1990, Jim Karras, said, "Hey Dave, Ryan Risner just resigned at Benedicine, you should apply." And I said, "You know, Jim, I have no educator experience. I've never run an administrative institution like this." He goes, "They don't need that. They need someone with a business mind and someone that knows how to lead." And I said, "Well, those are two things I've done in my past. I've got experience with that." So I texted Mr. Lorber here and said, I hear there's an opportunity. He said yes. He introduced me to Joe Sweeney, our new president of our board. And the moment I met Joe, I kind of knew if Joe's here and Chris is here, and I already knew the Abbott, I'm like, this is looking pretty good. And then I met Dominic Finelli. I would encourage you guys to invite Dominic Finelli, our principal, to come and speak with you as well. If you want to meet a pure human being, a triple domer from Notre Dame, and the person that's responsible for leading our young men in the school, that's the person that needs to be in front of you as well. Because once I met him, it was like I hit the lottery life again. Because I knew Chris, I knew Abbott, I met Joe, I met Dom, and it was over. I was like, man, I'm all in on this. And then it was getting through the rapids, if you will, of this interview process. Because I would tell you, I've worked for some of the largest tech companies in the world, but none of the interview process was as hard as it was getting this job. Especially when I had to host Abbott over for a meal, and I really messed up because although I had prepared a gluten-free meal, it didn't match the other 6 things that needed to be, that he couldn't eat versus what he could, so we fumbled the ball there. But he marked a couple negatives on me, but I think I passed anyway. And I was sitting down in the Abbey waiting for the final decision. And all I could think about is, you know, when we elect a new pope, you sit there and you wait for the puff of smoke to come, the white puff of smoke. I was just waiting for the puff of smoke and making sure that it was white. And I don't know if it was divine intervention, but that day, Bishop just happened to walk through, and I was sitting there, and I introduced myself, or reintroduced myself to Bishop. So it was divine intervention that you walked by, and the puff of smoke came up, and he came out and said, "Hey, we've selected you." So that's sort of my story in a nutshell. I've been in the role for 5 weeks. I would tell you that it's been the most exciting, energetic 5 weeks of my life. To walk back in those halls, to see these kids, to have the opportunity to work with young leaders like Chris and Dominic, and hopefully inspire them and teach them some of my learnings over the years. But for every bad day that we have, or bad thing that happens in terms of, not bad, but just a challenge. We had some issues in our parking lot with a car being broken into because our fencing was down. You know, that happened my first week. That's not a good thing. You don't want to deal with crisis like that. But for every one of those happen, I'm walking down the hall, and a little young man walks up to me and says, "Mr. Schroeder, I have a big luncheon today with the Holly Scholars. I don't know how to tie my tie. Can you tie my tie? Can you help me tie my tie?" And I sat there for 20 minutes doing a tie-tying clinic, and then all of a sudden I had an audience of 5 other kids, one of them taking a picture, one of them volunteering. "I know how to tie a tie," and I'm like, "Well, you help him." So those kind of experience, I went home and told my wife, I'm like, "Boy, you never guess what happened today. We had some theft in the parking lot, but at the same time I had this experience with a tie-tying clinic, and it just made it all worthwhile." So I'm truly inspired by the people in that building. Our teachers are the most dedicated people in the world. To do what they do for the number of years they do it is unbelievable. So a priority for me, as I start to get into a little bit of my vision, we have to take care of our faculty and staff. They are truly underrepresented when it comes to our investments in them. So part of what I'd like to do at some point is establish an endowment for our teachers and faculty so that we can continue to invest in the best and brightest and keep them in the school educating our students. The second thing that I'm really working towards is how do we take Benedicine and not only continue to build off of the college prep curriculum that we've established, but how do we change that into a life prep set of skills, trades, and just general readiness for life? Because not all of our kids are going to go on to college. College isn't what it used to be. It's expensive. It's somewhat woke in many cases, and in some cases it's not for everybody. So we want to prepare our kids to be successful young men in life. So one of the goals that I have is to augment the skills and teachings in the school, that state of Ohio curriculum that we have to follow, with a facility that teaches our kids various life skills, whether it be technical certifications, whether it be medical certifications, whether it be trades, whether it be culinary, etc. But I want to really invest in our kids and give them options if they choose not to go to college. I envision a separate facility, that way we can actually offer those kinds of options, not only to our students, but to the greater community. Part of that reason is because Benedictine, as you know, is a private school. We survive on tuition and donations. And what you probably don't know is the cost to educate a student today is $23,000 per student. Our tuition is $14,000. You don't have to be a business major to figure out that you're operating at a deficit. With that $14,000, we subsidize about average $8,000 to $9,000 of that, which leaves us in a tough spot. We rely on donations, obviously, but we need a revenue stream to complement that. So a big part of my job is going to be, how do we identify these revenue streams? How do we, activate alum who are very proud, as I am, of the school, get more of them to donate just in micro donations. It doesn't have to be millions of dollars. $5, $10, $100 makes a huge difference when you have 11,000 plus alum. So a big part of what I'm going to try to do is activate a program around micro donations that are consistent. We're going to activate a program where we go to our alum to say, remember us when you leave this place and go meet our maker. Because Benedictine has been there for 100 years, in 2027, and my goal is to keep us there for another 100 years. Okay? So activating our alumni, augmenting our educational opportunities for our young men, and figuring out how we can get more marketing of Benedictine, because we're in a competitive environment right now with some of the other Catholic schools. The one thing we have going for us is we're unapologetically Catholic. That'll never change. All right? We're not bowing down to some of these other things that are happening in our communities with respect to the social pressures. We are who we are. It's always going to be that way. School is not all Catholic, as you all know. We have minority groups, we have non-Catholics, we have people from all different socio-economical backgrounds, but they come to Benedictine for a solid education that's based in faith, and that's based on turning young boys into young, contributing members of society. We have a long history of that. I'm part of that. You're all part of that. Let's make that a reality for our future as well. I could talk forever, but I know you're probably getting bored of me. But I did want to say thank you for the opportunity, and wish you well. Go Bengals. If there's any questions you have, I'll take them. But thank you for this opportunity.
Questions? The floor is open to ask David. If you have any questions, raise your hand.
Yes, sir.
Dave, with your dedication to Benedictine and your belief in the system and the future, did you ever stop and think about becoming a priest?
Stop to become. Well, that I don't think I have. No.
You're qualified.
I've dedicated, I'm a family guy. I have 2 beautiful daughters and a wife that's 26 years, so I don't think the priesthood is in my future, unfortunately. But I respect the monks and what they do and their dedication, more so than anybody. So
Well, thank you for your service.
thank you. Well, thank you for your service too.
There you go. Anybody else has a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, looking back in time, to that period of my life, I was still looking for what was I going to do when I grew up.
Yeah.
Do you still do the shadow program?
We do. We do. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just met with a young man this morning from St. Pascal Baylon, which is where I went. And when the young men come in for shadow, the first thing I do is go over and introduce myself and talk to them. But yeah, we have today, it's called Bengal for a Day. And we bring them in, we do a presentation for them, they get to walk around the school, they attend some classes. It's part of our recruiting admissions process.
And I'm curious, is there any feedback that you get from the students over the years? How has that worked out for them?
Yeah, I mean, Chris is probably a better person to speak to it since I'm brand new to it, but I do know we asked for a survey. Chris's team, if you haven't met Mike Stracula, our head of admissions, he's in his second year now. This kid is unbelievable, and his passion is unreal. And what they've done in a short period of time, we went from 60-some students enrolled as 2 years ago. We had 92 in the building this year. So we added 30 kids just in 1 year with Mike's leadership. And already we have more inquiries at this point in time than we did at this point in time last year by over 100. And an inquiry is a funnel builder. You get more inquiries, you get more in the funnel. It's just like sales. I'm a sales guy. You put more in the funnel, and you can weed out the ones you want and the ones you don't want. And the more we have, the more we, more we can be selective. But yeah, we do follow-ups, we do surveys. I'm a big survey guy. I plan to survey the parents, and I plan to survey recent graduates to understand their experience. Because who's better to tell you to come to Benedictine than a guy that just graduated? It's not, I'm not, don't take this the wrong way, all of us gray hairs telling them what a great school it is. It's the guy that just graduated a year before and said, hey, I just had a great experience at that school, let me tell you why.
And they're our best salesmen, our students.
100%.
And our recent graduates as well, so we'll utilize them as best we can.
David, another shadowing would be to have, as you mentioned, talking about preparing kids for graduation and what they're going to do, is to have some of our alumni have some of our students shadow them for a day at their place of work.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Bishop. I think we do some of that, but we don't do it to the degree that I'd like to see it. We have a program, as you probably know, the BenX program. And part of what BenX is experiential learning, where we actually set kids up in different areas of discipline, whether it be medical, whether it be entrepreneurship, whether it be media, and the other one is engineering.
Yep.
And what we do is we try to set those kids up to go do exactly that, go to places of work and do some shadowing. What I would like to do, Bishop, is I'd like to invest a little bit more energy into student-run businesses on campus as well. Bring back our Spirit bookstore and have it run by students. Maybe invest in a coffee shop on campus. Ways that we can actually teach these young men how to develop some of these life skills and then figure out what they want to do. But the whole idea of trades and certifications, there are some great careers out there. Trust me, 40% of the 40% of the people that worked for me at various points in time didn't have a 4-year degree. They had technical certifications, and these are guys making $100,000, $150,000 a year easily, no questions asked, without a college degree. So those jobs are out there. It's all our future. So infusing a technology emphasis into our curriculum is a big focus of mine as well.
Can I get my biology grade upgraded?
You can. Yes, sir. 100%. We'll go modify the...
Push it up to A.
Push it up to an A? What was it?
You don't want to know.
If it's not at least the grade level below, I can't go to A. So if it was a C, I could get you to a B, but not to an A. I'm sorry.
I'll take the B.
Okay. The other person I would suggest you guys have here is one of our chairman of our science department, Dr. Linway. This individual is doing some amazing things with how he's teaching our young men the sciences. And I think you'd be very impressed by his talk and what he stands for, because it's that kind of talent that's in our building teaching our kids. So, if you ever if we have an opportunity for a guest speaker, maybe Dr. Linway might be one too.
It'll be perfect.
Yeah. So I don't want to take any more time because the bishop is way more important than me. So. Oh, yeah. Oh, hierarchy though. Right? That's the hierarchy.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Abbott Gary. Any questions? Thank you. That was the quickest story I could tell. But of course, it's a pleasure to be here. I was at another place several years ago, Corral some type of Golden Grill. You guys were there at one time.
Right.
So I remember talking then. I don't remember what I said then, so if you were there back then, let me know. Anybody back there when I talked? Oh, I thought you were going to help me with this talk. Okay. So just a brief story is that my life, I grew up in Garfield Heights. Because of the population of the grade schools back in the 60s, I couldn't get into a Catholic grade school, so I went to public school, but I went to Benedicine and graduated from there in '74. After that, I went to Benedicine College for 2 years, south of Chicago, in Lisle, Illinois, St. Procopius College, which is now Benedictine University. That monastery that found that college is the monastery that our monks came from. And the Benedictine monks over in the 1800s and 1900s were founded for particular ethnic groups. So a group of German monks came over to New York. They didn't have room for them. They landed in Pennsylvania, Latrobe, Pennsylvania. St. Vincent's Arch Abbey. They had just established diocese there, and the bishop said we could use you. And they founded monasteries. So there's about 20 houses, 20 monasteries in our congregation. And we were founded for the Slovaks in the Cleveland area. The monastery we came from, they were founded for the Czech and Bohemian people in the southwest of Chicago. So initially in Chicago, then they moved. So that's a brief history of like the monasteries, how they sort of developed over time. Of course, most monasteries either have, I shouldn't say of course, but most monasteries do have either college or university or high school attached to them. Because in the rule of St. Benedict it says that we educate, the fact that we're educating people in relationship with God. The monks enter the school of the Lord's service. So with that being said, I graduated from Benedictine in '74. I went to college for 2 years, Illinois Benedictine College, joined the monastery, and then I had different jobs throughout the years. Bishop Roger could tell you that when I was in high school, I was a helper in the main office. He was principal at the time, and we had his mom was the secretary. I helped her a lot with the work that she had to do there. That of course he gave her, right, Bishop?
You just hung around it.
You're not supposed to tell that, But when he was in high school, my mom was secretary at Benedictine. So it's a nice connection that we have there. And as I reflect on, I celebrate 40 years as a priest, and I reflect on God is great all the time, and we see that He blesses us. And so many times we're not aware of that until like later on, and we reflect on that. But I would say, as we were sitting here and different people were talking, I was chaplain. I had a number of jobs at the school. I was chaplain to our athletic teams for over 20-some years. And my goal as chaplain was to celebrate the sacraments, because I love celebrating the sacraments, bringing people closer to God. So part of my goal was to bring the students closer to God through Mass and through prayer. And we had a lot of different good things that happened from that. I can tell you, sometimes I pray, with the cross-country guys as they line up right at that line, right before they go. Sometimes I pray with the wrestlers in the locker room. We always had Mass, Coach Basu, we always had Mass before game day, and we started off with the rosary on the bus, and then he sort of scaled that back after a little bit as time went on. But we would pray, in the locker room, on the field. And Coach Basu was a great man to learn from. I'm not an athlete. I played baseball for 2 summers. I had perfect batting average of 0.000. So I retired after that. I didn't quit, I retired. And I also have perfect catching average in the field, 0.000. And I realized what was wrong after, many years later when I became more mature, that as the ball was coming in, whether it be in left field or at the plate, I would close my eyes. Well, you can't do anything when your eyes are closed, but God's angels protected me. I never got hit in the head. So I have to give God credit for that. And I moved on to other things, but that inspired me because I learned 3 lessons from that. Never to give up on oneself, never to give up on the underdog, and to appreciate others because they have talents I don't. So what I did was, Abbot Roger, Bishop Roger was Abbot at the time, I went up to him and I said, Abbot, I would like to be chaplain to our athletic teams. He says, Gary, you don't know anything about sports. How are you going to be chaplain? you know. So he did give me the permission, and so I was chaplain for the football team, but I like what Coach Basu did. And the reason I'm sharing this is because what you and I do, how we relate to others, even in praying for others, maybe they don't know it, affects other people. And I saw how Coach Basu, he would start his day off with Mass and go through the day, and he brought his faith into what he did. And I saw that, I said, you know, I want to take that to the other teams, because they really didn't have a chaplain for the other teams. And Bishop Roger, Abba Roger at the time, had to say, well, you know, Gary, you could be going to a number of different events, especially when you have 3, 4, 5 different teams per season. You know, you have freshman, JV, varsity, I could be like never at the act. So he's concerned. So he says, you could skip 4 nights, but the other 3 nights you have to be at prayers. So you probably don't remember that conversation, do you? So I listened to him. I stayed in for 3 nights. The other 4 nights, I was, you know, usually I would go with the varsity teams. And I really enjoyed that because I was there to let the students know someone cares about them, but also to bring them closer to God. Because I know a couple of kids would say, you know, they never went to church at home. So the only church they got was at Benedicine. And just as you heard from President Schroeder, you know, talking about we're Catholic, unapologetically Catholic, it's important to live the faith. And that's what I try to do. And I could tell you stories upon stories. You know, I remember one soccer coach, he would give me the last few minutes of halftime to talk with the kids. And so I would have to come up with something on the spot, because with football, when I gave the homily for the football team, I had a whole week to prepare. What team are we playing? How good are they? How good are we? What do we need to talk about? And I would like integrate that. But with the soccer, I only have one period of 40 minutes to prepare for something, you know, to say right then and there. And a number of times, you know, the kids appreciated it. And I remember one time, you know, I just felt that once in a while we get into seasons where the team doesn't do too well, and you know, you could see how it tests a person's character. Because when you don't do that well, or you don't meet the goals that you want to achieve, you have a number of different ways to respond. Either you say, I don't care, I'm scrapping everything, I'm going to get back in there. And some people like, I give up. You know, it's like, it's useless. So we had this one soccer team that a number of kids they weren't doing too well, so some of the kids, you know, as soon as the game starts and we start losing, you know, all of a sudden you get some kids just the heads down. So I'm like, you know, we've got to keep this going. And I learned, you know, when I was with the football team many years ago, that it's important, even though I didn't know really football, to cheer. I would cheer them on because that would have an impact on the guys on the sidelines. Some guys, you know, would be looking to see their girlfriends in the stands, or they're talking with each other, and a lot of guys would be focused, but some guys weren't. So when I would walk back and forth as the game's going on, and I would cheer, you know, let's go D, let's go O. You know, all of a sudden some kids said, why is he cheering? And then they start, you know, getting other kids, you know, involved and saying, well, maybe we should cheer our teammates on. One time I was cheering, I said, let's go D, and the kid said, the offense is on the field. What can I say? I just knew that blue and white jersey and blue and white jersey. What can I say? You know? So I cautiously took my time afterwards before I cheered that shirt again. But going back to the soccer time, there was one time I said, oh, I don't know if I could really inspire these kids. You know, not that I inspire them to like turn the game around, which I would hope so. But I just thought, you know, I don't know. So what happens? The coach says, you have a few words, Father? I says, no. So then that was the only time I really didn't have a few words. So I walked to the sidelines. I remember one of the players afterwards said, Father Gary is a starter, a senior. He says, if there was a time I needed to hear some words of inspiration, was right now, and you didn't get it. So it was a learning experience for me. And I share that because, you know, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter how active or inactive you are, you know, our actions, our prayer, our relationship with each other is very important. We could encourage people to be their best. You know, even if there are times that, you know, we're struggling or someone else is struggling, the Lord wants us to be our best. And I could tell you more other stories, I guess other stories, you know, that I've had, but that's a couple of lessons that I learned. So I was sitting down waiting for to be called up, and I'm thinking, what I'm going to tell him, I says, I'm going to let the Spirit move. So that's the message I have. It's great to have you here. And I'm going to share one other story. I had a number of different jobs at the school as well as at the monastery. Well, 2 stories. So at the monastery, I had about 4, 5, 6 different jobs. At the school, I had more than that. So one day, there was a coach, a good friend, cross-country side of Canich. I don't know if you guys know of him or heard of him. But he and I got together, got along pretty well. Well, he tends to have some sarcasm in his dialogue. And so every time, the abbot would give me a new job after Abbot Roger and his Abbot Clement, I would say, hey, Si, I have another job. He goes, the abbot doesn't know what to do with you yet, does he? So when I was elected abbot, he goes, the community doesn't know what to do with you yet, and that's why you're elected abbot, so I don't know. So there you have it about that. But other than that, the last thing I'll say is, because I could tell a lot of things, but I know you have time, but when I was the moderator of the Alumni Association, we have reunions, well, 2 last things. We have reunions, and as moderator, I would go and be there and stuff like that. And I remember I could still remember, I don't remember who it was, but sometimes we don't see each other from our classes for years. For some people, it's the 50th anniversary. It's been 49 years since they've seen us. Some don't come back, So I remember at the end, as we were cleaning up, and it was like the last group or so of guys who were leaving. One guy put his arm around the shoulder of the other guy, one of his classmates. And sometimes I get emotional too when I talk these stories. He says, until we meet again. Until we meet again. And to me, it's the emotional point because it's like the bond that they developed at Benedictine, and he's like sharing it. Saying, my friendship, my love, my relation is with you until we meet again. So I thought that was really powerful. Now, on the other side, one, I told you there were 2 last stories. So last, I guess the last. So this is the last. So anyways, what happened was I remember one time, several times I'll go up, because I started teaching in 1980. And then I've taught until I was elected abbot. This is my 10th year as abbot. So I taught, 30 years or whatever it was. So I go a lot of times to our reunions if I can, talk to the guys, especially the guys that are in the 80s and 90s. I had more classes at that time. And I would go up to them and I start talking to them, talk about faith. I go, first of all, look at their hands. Oh, no ring. We're recruiting monks. How would you like to become a monk? So when they see me, they go, oh, he's going to recruit me again. So that's one thing, Dave, you're being recruited already, and you're married already. But then the other thing I would say, hey, when was the last time you went to confession? They're going, this is reunion. We don't talk about that stuff. I said, okay, when's the last time you went to mass? Well, isn't it nice outside? And they change the topic. So, I'm not afraid to bring it to their attention. Do I put them on the spot? Probably does, but it's like I just try at times say, our faith is important that we can't just let go of our faith. We have to live it. And so that's all I have to say right now because we could go on for another hour, but I think I'll end it right now. And Bishop Roger, you're next.
Thanks, Father Gary. You know what? I'm so glad to stretch again. Dave, the one thing you didn't mention about Dominic Finelli is that he's the grandson of Augie Boss.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
So that's another why we like him.
Yes.
We like him. I was I was baptized William Joseph, and I came to the monastery. I came to the monastery after my high school experience and a couple of years of playing football up in St. John's in Collegeville. I come to the monastery. Time for novitiate. The first thing in novitiate is you get a religious name. I always wanted Roger to be my name. I wanted Roger to be my name, so I'm all set to take Roger. And the novice master tells me you got to submit 3 names. I said, what? He says, because the abbot gets his choice. What do you mean he gets his choice? Well, he's the one that names you. Just like your parents named you at baptism, he's the one that gives you a name for the order. And he says, I said, so I got to submit 3 names, but I want Roger. He says, well, submit 3 names. If he doesn't like those, he'll give you his own. Oh, geez. So I submitted Roger as my first choice. I'm going to put two choices he's not going to give me. So I put Valentine for my second choice. I said, he won't give me Valentine. And my last name is Grease. So I put Axel for my last choice. I says, he's not going to want to bump in Axel Grease. Roger. I got Roger.
I like that.
Yeah. You know, there's the, I've had a great experience at the high school in Abbey that you might be getting into with me sometime. I got ordained in 1963 and went to school for 1 year to get my master's degree in education. Came back, started teaching in 64. And okay, so I'm teaching 64. At the end of the 64 year, I get a call from the Abbot. The Abbot says, you're going to be assistant principal next year. I said, Ken, I only have 1 year experience here. He says, you're going to be assistant principal. So now I'm an assistant principal, and I'll tell you, it was fun. It was fun being assistant principal, you know? You give all the orders, okay? First day of school, we have opening mass. I get on the PA system, I says, don't carry your books over to St. Benedict's for mass, put them in your locker. So one little freshman comes to me crying. He says, Father Roger, I can't put my books in my locker. I said, why not? He says, because somebody put their lock on my locker and I can't get it open. I don't know what do I do? I said, put your books in my office and get them after mass. What's your locker number? And he told me, I think it was 511. Okay, 511. So anyway, I'm walking over to mass. Another kid's carrying his books. I said, I told you to put your books in your locker. The kid comes up and says, Father, I put my lock in the wrong locker and I don't know where it is now and I can't do it. So I says, hey, your lock is on locker 511. Go back, take it off, and put your books in there. Father, how'd you know my lock's on that locker? Because you're going to find out that I know everything that goes on. I had no trouble with that kid for 4 years. But then, 4 years later, after 4 years of being assistant principal, now the Abbot comes and says, now you're going to be principal. Okay, that's okay, thank you. So one day I'm assistant principal, next day I'm principal. And that lasts for 8 years. From 69 to 77. Okay? And I had some interesting experiences in those years too, I'll tell you. Yeah, some of these guys. You know, one year the seniors are going to have a senior prank. And they had the old multilith machine. You know, have you ever seen those things with the purple stencils and everything? They smell real good too. Okay? Anyway, it was right next to my principal's office. And the dummies threw the carbon copy into the wastebasket. Well, I went over there and saw it, and I read, geez, seniors, bring your alarm clocks to school tomorrow and have them ring at 10 o'clock. Okay, that's good. That's a good prank. Okay. So I come in the next day, I see my mother's my secretary. I go, Mom, I says, we're going to have a fire drill tomorrow, 10 to 10. We had a fire drill. We're all outside, and it's raining besides. And Steve's coming up to me and said, Father, when are we going back in? I said, well, as soon as the alarm clock stops ringing. So I had fun experiences like that. But I was freshman football. I was just junior varsity football coach when I was from assistant principal. Then when I became principal, I didn't have enough time, so I was freshman football coach with Mr. O. Okay, so he and I were freshman coaches. And then I said that we had some kids out at St. Pascal Bay, at your place, out at Pascal Baylor, and out at St. Williams, out in Euclid and everything. They were bringing kids in. I said, we need to get them in here somehow. So we got a old school bus. We renovated it, and I started driving a school bus every morning. Oh, so I get up in the morning, first thing I drive the school bus. But one experience happened. Beaumont were trying to get 4 girls that lived in the neighborhood over to school, and they had no way to get there. So they said, your bus comes right by here. Could they ride on your bus? Sure. So I said, have them over by the driveway to the school at 6:30. So they were there at 6:30. Got on the bus. And some of them I still know some of them. No, but I'd go over and pick up Holy Rosary and Little Italy. Then I'd go out to Pascal Baylor, then go out to St. Williams and St. Roberts, and come back to St. Gregory's, St. Clair's and St. Gregory's. And when I got there, I just went down to Regina High School where they were going to school. I pulled around. And this one man, see some of this, he's breathing heavy, his face is beet red. I get off the bus and said, Sister, what's wrong? You never told me there'd be boys on that bus. This is a Benedictine bus, you know.
But then I really got her mad. I should have done this, but I really got her. I said, sister, I can't take it. So don't worry about those girls, because none of them complain. But it was always interesting, being a principal, getting called down to the office for emergencies. One time I had a second-year algebra. Second-year algebra for kids who never passed first year. Okay, that was a tough year. But every Wednesday I'd give a little quiz. Okay, give a quiz. And I get called down to the office for emergency. So in those days we didn't have to have somebody come in to watch them all the time, you know. And so I said, let's just behave yourself. No cheating, okay? No cheating. So I go down, I come back, I sit at my desk. Oh no, I left my answer sheet on my desk. And there were two of the kids that copied every answer. They weren't even smart enough to make a mistake, so I know something wrong. Because their averages was only 50% to that point. Okay, so anyway, so I praised them up. And now I see what happens. See what happens when you study and you prepare yourself. Look at the good grades you get. Oh, that was fantastic. Okay. Well, everybody else is looking at me and says, hey, see, that dummy doesn't know what they did. You know, so next week I gave another quiz. I had my secretary calling me down another emergency. You know, I left the wrong answer sheet. These two kids did the same thing. They did the same thing. They did the same thing. And when I gave it back to them, and I said, what the heck happened? Did you study it all? You got 0. They got 0. I got their average back to 50 where it belonged. They called me for cheating. They said, that's cheating, Father. But I loved my kids in those days, and as principal, I used to have mass for the football team. You know, and Tony Russ came up to me after one of the masses and says, oh, they're out here. I never heard that gospel explained that way. Because I was able to find a football theme in the gospel, you know. And that's how I would give the little homily. I never heard it explained that way. But anyway, I used to be on the field with the earphones, because Augie Basu wanted to be protected from those guys in the booth, the language they were using. Okay, because Augie was a big good guy, though. And I was listening to all those languages. Okay, but anyway, I get to play and give it to him, and he would call it in if he liked it. But the other thing was, one year we had a running back as a sophomore. His name was he's with the Ravens. Pat Moriarty. He's a little skinny kid as a sophomore. Little skinny kid. And so we're beating John Adams by 35 points, 35 to nothing with what, 3 minutes to go, and we're on their 10-yard line. So he says up there, send it Mike Mentor. He'll fumble, because he didn't want to score it for it. Well, he'll fumble. Okay, so 3 plays later, we've only gained 2 yards, but he didn't fumble. Okay, give Moriarty a chance. Okay, send Moriarty in. So Moriarty goes in, and like a little water bug, goes in for a touchdown. Man, he comes back. He's he's very skinny kid, but he's trying to stick out his chest as much as he can as he walks by the coach. And the coach looks at him and goes, "Hell's bells, Moriarty, what are you doing out there?" He puts his head down, walks to the back of the group, you know. And he gets back there, and Augie Boston reads the reason. No, he's going to be good next year, isn't he? So those little experiences I had. But then after those 8 years as principal, I get a call to be now prior of the monastery. Prior of the monastery, right under the abbot. I'm number 2 man in the monastery. Okay, then after 4 years, the abbot retires, and they elect me the abbot in 1981. So now I'm the abbot in 81. You know, all those monks I had in high school, and now I'm their abbot. I'm their father figure. Okay, now I spent the next 20 years burying most of them because they were at an age of their 80s and 90s, like I am, you know, and they got up there, and so it was one of those experiences I had that was rewarding in the sense that I was able to be over them for those 20 years, because this was a time when we had so many changes, and we built up the school. We wanted to build because we needed to expand. Okay, so we wanted to build a church for ourselves, and we wanted to build a new wing, you know, for the dining room and so forth. So anyway, so at first I never asked people for money. I was never a fundraiser, and so the fundraising company came in and they said, "Well, Abbott, we gotta get a big gift from an alumnus so we can start this and make it public." how much we gotta get. We gotta get at least 250,000. Okay, I'm gonna ask somebody. So I said, I know, I got a classmate a year ahead of me was Jim Truman. He was the founder and president of Red Roof Inns. Okay, so I said, let me call Jim, see what he, because I played golf with him a few times. Okay, so he flies in with his helicopter on Ascension Thursday, because we didn't have school that day. And he parks in the parking lot, comes in my room, sits in the wheel in a rocking chair. We're chit-chatting. But that's enough of that. He says, let's get to this serious. What do you guys want from me? And I says, Jim, we need a big investment or a big donation for one of our alumni to start the program. To start the program. He said, what kind of investment? I said, we need $250,000. He looks at me and goes, now he's really nervous. He's shaking his head. I want to give you more than that. So he gave us a donation of $500,000. $500,000. What a way to start a campaign. But then we're building the building. We have 5 guest rooms. Okay, 5 guest rooms. Now we got to supply furniture for all those 5 guest rooms. So, hey Jim, next time you build a new Red Roof Inns, could you buy the furnishings for 5 extra rooms? I says, you could sell them to us a lot cheaper than we could buy them on the market. Well, he says, okay. A couple weeks later, a truck goes up, furnishings for 5 guest rooms, and no bill. Okay, it's another donation from Jim Jewett. Wonderful guys. So after, we were able to build that. Father was going to a big convention for the First Catholic School Ladies Association, and to help with that money, they gave us $1 million donation to help build our church. I was getting good at that, huh, Dave?
Yeah. You still, can I recruit you?
You said you're going to come and ask me some questions. Anyway, so I spent 20 years as abbot. I got one more year because when I was elected, we had to resign at 65. We had to resign at 65, and they did that so that you could be re-elected for another 8 years, but at 65 you're still young enough to help out in the community as a teacher or whatever. Okay, so I'm 64 years old, St. Benedict's Day, and we have a big celebration with the priests and the bishops from the diocese. And Bishop Pillows leaves, and I see him leaving, and I get somebody calls over and says, "Is Bishop Pillows still here?" I said, "No, he just left." He says, "Can you catch him? He's got an emergency phone call." His mother was sick, so I think she was in the hospital. So I went out and told him, "You have an emergency call, so you better get home." Okay, so we went home. I get back to my room and I have a voicemail from Bishop Pillow. "Can I see you down in my office on Friday?" This was a Wednesday. On Friday, I says, "I'm sorry." I says, I'm going to be out of town on Friday." I said, "I know Thursday's your day off." I says, "I got nothing to do for the next few hours until Vespers, so come down today." He said, "Sure." So I'm running down to his office, all the way down there. I'm thinking, which monk is in trouble now? Because the only time he ever called me to his office was when he wanted to tell me, "Hey, you got to do this monk to do, stop doing this, or get this monk to stop doing that." And so I get down there, he's got a smile on his face. He says, "Bishop, I got a call from the nuncio. Pope John Paul wants you to be auxiliary bishop in Cleveland." So yesterday I'm a principal at the high school. Next day I'm auxiliary bishop in Cleveland. I went from one thing to another all those years, okay? And so finally in 2012, when I turned 75, I sent my letter to the Holy Father, to Pope Benedict XVI at this time, saying I'm resigning because of my age, according to canon law. So I didn't hear anything for 6 months, and I get a call from the nuncio again, said, "Bishop Chris, we heard from the office of bishops, and they ask if your health is well, you can go. We ask you if you can continue for a little while." Let's look for a little while. It's a little while. Well, it's undetermined. Okay, undetermined. Well, in my resignation was finally accepted the following year by Pope Francis. So I had nominated by John Paul, sent my resignation to Francis, and it's accepted by, Benedict, and it's accepted by Francis. And so now it's 2020, and I'm going over to the installation for Bishop Olesek, and I'm in the back of the nuncio, and I said, "Your Excellency, I sent my resignation in 2012, and they told me for a little while, and they asked what that meant. They said, it's undetermined." I said, "That's 2012, this is 2020. I said, "Now I'm beginning to understand what undetermined means." And so finally, last year, we got the new auxiliary, so I said, I'm retiring. So I go to see Abbott Gary, and Abbott Gary gives me two guest rooms that I can use for my residence, so in the Abbey. But when I came back to the Abbey, I told him, I said, Father Abbott, remember now, I'm coming back to the Abbey as a retired diocesan bishop, not as a monk, so I don't want any assignments. Okay? So living up to that, he's been very good, very good. So anyway, so that's my life story. I've been up and down, from one thing to another. And so, as you hear, a lot of people take sabbaticals. I got a half hour between those assignments, just time enough to move things over. So now I'm enjoying my time in the Abbey, and it's nice and relaxing, and I get to do things, and I get to be around, and so I have a life that I've learned, tried to get for the last 20 years. So
You guys should play
back
off
home,
of that.
back home. So God bless you all. Thank you for coming to these reunions. Like it's like a reunion every quarter, I guess. You know, it's like a reunion, and I enjoy being here with you. I enjoy seeing all of you, and the atmosphere is just wonderful. George does a fine job. So we ask you, well, let's ask God's blessing on all. The Lord be with you. May the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come upon all of you and be with you forever. Amen? Amen. God bless. Go Bengals.
You remind me a ton of
Just out of your way.
I lived under a bone. You have a little takeaway, some more magnets. Just put it on a computer, a fridge, a car.
That's one of the reasons I went to Benedicine.
All right.
My uncle graduated
What
in
I'm going to
46.
do right now is pick up my little program.
Bishop Wonderall,
Hey, you're not going to
glasses used to come to his mother's house, my grandmother's house.
I have to write it down
I used to be
because
the
you know you get program like this already when you're 82. So,
Hit him again.
first of all, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Chris, Mr. Schroeder, thank you. And I want to thank Abbott and Gary for coming. So I want you all to know that we have a home here. And for this having a home, we want to thank Mark for the class of 1958 to have us here as our home. Thank God for that.
I'm gonna have to
Okay, thank you guys.
I gotta.
Everybody from Benedicine.
Wasn't your
That's right. So, on behalf of that, just like Abbott Gary said, to share memories. That's why you are all here from different classes, to share memories and go back to the way it was. So, in that case, I like what he said, because that's what this purpose of this luncheon is to come all together and share our memories. And I'm telling you, this was the biggest luncheon we ever had. And thank you for coming. But I want to also mention, Gary,
When it goes to him,
here,
go to me.
Abbott Gary.